This is the kitchen of Elizabeth Farm, the house of the MacArthurs, and it dates from about the mid-1820s. Kitchens had a habit of burning down because of their fuel stove. They were normally housed in a separate building so that any fire would not spread to the main house, and that is the case here as well. The 19th century plumbing installations are a specialist field which the knowledge is fast disappearing. So I've made it a special interest of mine to be concerned with the restoration of systems within buildings of that period. Cast iron stoves like this Lassetter were an innovation of technology of the 19th century. They started to be installed around about 1830. Better class homes often had them by the 1850s, and by the end of the century and earlier 20th century, they were much more sort of commonplace. This stove was installed in 1904, put into operation in 1905. It represents quite a considerable advance on an open fire in that it gives you control over baking in the oven, hot plates on top, and hot water from a side tank. The oven and the tank are jackets of which the heat from the central fire circulates hot air around the jacket and then up the flue. And it also in this one circulates hot air around the hot water tank and up the flue, and the flue has shutters on it to control the way the heat operates and how quickly it burns. To draw off hot water, this faucet would be used. There is always a air vent, so if the water boils, there's a steam release. This stove is special in that after 100 years it's still fully functional and in operation. Very few kitchen consumer products nowadays would last that long. It still serves its function. It will cook food, bake food, it heats hot water. In Elizabeth Farm, the kitchen stove was used to provide the water for bathing and washing. It's therefore probably the most important room in the house, particularly after the 19th century when servants and maids became a scarce sort of commodity. Well, what's exciting about this stove is the innovation of having the hot water provision automatically fed from a contraption within this cupboard here, which is a fairly unique device. There are not many of these and probably no others in existence at present. This tank fills up, controlled by a ball cock. When it reaches a certain level, the water turns off, and that same level of water is achieved in the storage tank within the stove. This saves filling the stove with water, removes the problem of the stove running out of water and overheating the tank and therefore reducing its life. The tank for this system is handmade by the plumber. It's fairly heavy gauge. It has seam joints which have been soldered. This particular tank, of course, would have had a cover on top to stop dirt getting into it. And the tank itself is made of galvanised wrought iron. Plumbers in general did a range of functions at the end of the 19th century. They made basins, they made baths from sheet metal, and they made these tanks from sheet metal. The trade of sheet metal worker arose out of plumbing. They installed the bell systems in houses, which later gave rise to the electrical trades, and that became a separate trade. They installed gas lighting, as was installed in this house at the turn of the century. They installed the water supply, and they put the roofs on houses, the gutters, and the other essential services that carry water away from the house. We are very lucky to have a working example such as this, providing an insight into how life was in the 19th century and early 20th century, still fully operational and which still survives, and which particularly school children can come and get the experience of what it was like to be in a kitchen of this kind.